Hey everybody, Jim Gaustad. I am back with IK Multimedia with the Brown Sound collections 80, 81, 82, 84. Consider this the official pre-release video. Um, they have not officially released yet, but any day now they are in the can, and the development team is just wrapping up a couple more things, and I expect them out in days from this point. Um, so it's very cool. Very excited. I'm really proud of these collections. Just a few changes though I wanted to talk about, and we had some confusion from the last release from 78, 79. So I want to cover that, and I'm going to play some stuff so you can hear how they sound, and then I want to go through a few different things because as the Van Halen albums progressed, we all know that he started to use the harmonizer. We started to see the harmonizer, or started to hear the harmonizer. I actually can hear it on Van Halen 1 a little bit, and not in the way that you're used to hearing it, but just a eventide H910. And you can hear it again on Van Halen 2, but it really becomes prevalent. You start to really hear it on Fair Warning. So I'm going to show you how I do that with Tonex in Logic. You can do the same thing with the Tonex pedal, and using like a pedal to do that, like a pitch detune pedal. Or I'm going to show you it's not exactly the perfect way to do it, but you can come awfully close with the built-in chorus on in Tonex. So I'll show you a little cheat for that, and do that with the reverbs too. But yeah, I'm just going to play through some of the things, show you what the sounds are like, and we will take it from there. I'm excited. Okay, so when I create these collections, you know, 78, 79, we're talking about 80, 81 right now. I go about it as I have to set a baseline. I have to figure out what the guitar needs to sound like in the room here through the amplifier and everything else. And a lot of that involves the guitar, what guitar I'm using. So I'm trying to use period correct when I create these things. When I set up the amplifier and I set the room up and set the signal chain up and everything, it's meant to replicate what would have really happened in the studio with Van Halen. So this guitar, for example, I'm using a Super 70 pickup in this. This is the Destroyer. This is the Greco version. Those of you that have followed my videos know that this is essentially the Ibanez Destroyer. It's identical to the Ibanez Destroyer. And this is what was used to record Women and Children First, the Chris Holmes version of this, because Ed had chopped up, made the shark out of his. So this is the guitar that I use to dial in the 1980 collection, because that's mostly the guitar that was used on Women and Children First. So completely stock, 500K pot in here. The tone control is hooked up, which I doubt it was I don't even think they had it hooked up in the Chris Holmes. They only had one pickup in it, but it was a Super 70. Okay, so for 81, which is also part of this collection, I'm using my Frankenstein. Okay, this is, and some of you know this guitar too. This is a Northern Ash body. This is a maple cap neck. Donnie Ward made this. It's a really great neck. I love this thing. 1 3/4 inch wide, you know, but standard, correct spec and everything. I've got a 250K pot in here and the pickup. So I think some of you that have been following me know that I have I've been having Paul McKeever wire me some custom pickup, because I thoroughly believe that 1981 was Ed's DiMarzio Super Distortion that he put the Alnico 5 in. So later on, for whoever rewound this pickup for him, I think duplicated that on his original PAF. So this is, for now, because we've been melting pickups in the potting process, we haven't found a good bobbin material yet, but I know it's coming. This particular pickup is an EVH Frankenstein. It's one of the early ones, so it's like 13.67, 13.7K. So it's almost identical to the old DiMarzio Super Distortions. But I've got a short rough cast Alnico 5 in here instead of the degaussed A2. So that's what I used as the baseline to put these 1981 collections together, the 1981 collection together. I believe it to be as close to period correct. It sounds really, really close. I did swap out different pickups in here to make sure that it would work with different things. I put an Antiquity JB in here. I put an EVH Frankenstein with the degaussed A2 in it. I had a 78 in here. I ran a bunch through here, and like always, I test all kinds of different guitars to make sure that it works with the collection.
Alright, so now we're in Logic. I just wanted you guys to see what this looks like for using Tonex in a DAW. You can also use Tonex as a standalone software, but I like to use it when I'm doing the recording and doing these videos and everything and trying to get the best sound I can get. I put it in Logic as a plug-in. So it looks like this. It looks just like the standalone. For the most part, it looks just like the standalone Tonex software interface. So this is, I'm doing this video before I have the actual skins for the new collection, for the 8081 collection. So I haven't seen the completed package yet. So I've got my actual, I'm doing this with the actual tone models and presets that I've created in this setup. So anyway, if you'll notice, whenever I set these up, all of these controls are at noon, or it's straight up and down. I did that on purpose so that you can adjust these to adjust for your guitar. Like if you're using a like a DiMarzio Super Distortion, or you've got some high output pickup, any one of them, any one of the, like the Duncan Distortion or the X2N Power, anything that's high output, you might want to find yourself running this down to like 4 or 3.5 even. Adjust to taste, but there's a lot of output in these high output pickups, and that's not how this collection was built. And honestly, whenever I'm adjusting from guitar to guitar, when I'm testing these, before I say, okay, I've found the good preset, or I've found the good combination for putting this preset together, the tone model together, I typically don't have to move a tone control much more than half a point either way. That's going from different guitar to different guitar. What you find is that maybe too much bottom end, take the bass down to 4. That's the most I think I ever get out of it. But I just wanted to, I see when the first collection came out, when the 78, 79 collection came out, I saw some guys on YouTube that were just cranking these things, everything on 10, and that's not how this was set up. So it's set up so that you can adjust the baseline tone created for my guitars, which are period correct, with the right pickups and everything, is everything straight up at noon. Okay, so I'm gonna put this over to the side for a minute and show you how I do this then in Logic. So here's the Tonex track. That's this plugin right here running in Tonex. Then I'm running effects. Now I've got the room simulator muted and I've got the harmonizer muted. So that I'm going to show you that we'll start talking about that on later albums. But for now I'm just using the Sunset Sound Studio Reverb. And I'm using one of the Ross Hogarth presets, the bright chamber. This is what it sounds like. Let me get this down here. So if I want to adjust some reverb, maybe that's too much reverb, I'm going to pull this fader down a little bit. And of course I can adjust the panning. But if you're doing some of the early Ed stuff, and he actually did it later on too, where the guitar was still panned pretty hard to the left. The effects will always go straight up, but the guitar itself is panned in most cases all the way hard left. But if you don't want to do that so much, you can just go about right there. Okay, so now you've heard what it sounds like with using the Sunset Sound Reverb. So let's say you don't have the IK Multimedia Sunset Sound Reverb. So I'm going to take the reverb out of it completely, and I'm going to run this straight up the middle. So I'm going to run the panning straight up the middle for the Tonex plugin, and then we're going to employ the built-in Tonex reverb here. So I always set it up for the Van Halen stuff, and this thing does a really great job. I set it up for the plate. The mix, about 17 usually feels about right to me, 15 to 17. I always brighten the color up a little bit, maybe 4 or 5. I never mess with the time. Pre-delay for me is always 20 or 30. Okay, then just make sure the switch is on. So we employ that. Let me get this out of the way a little bit, and let's go play this from the beginning again. So you can hear the reverb. We can run it a little bit hotter than that. It does a pretty good job. I mean, it does a really good job. And you've got delays in here too. The same thing. You can set up you can do a tape delay, like if you want to simulate an echoplex. I would do that if you're going to do an echoplex like a tape echo, you put it pre. So that means it's like you would run an echoplex on the front end of the amp. If you want to run something after the amp, you put it in post. But for a tape echo, you would always run it in front of the amp. 350 milliseconds. Yeah, that's a good all-around one. All right, so I shut the reverb off. Now just listen to the delay. And then if we wanted to go to digital, it'll sound more big and organic. What do we got for time here? 350 still. All right. So you see, that's pretty cool. It's pretty useful. You don't need all the fancy stuff, and you can do this right in the standalone Tonex software, and you can do it on the pedal and build your presets that way too if you're using Tonex 1 or you're using the big Tonex pedal. All right, let's move up to the 81 portion of the collection, so fair warning. I'm set up the same way here in the DAW. I'm going to turn the reverb back on, the Sunset Sound reverb, and I'm also going to turn on the Harmonizer, because this is where you start to hear the Harmonizer, and I'll show you here. So this is the Eventide H910, and it's not doing any pitch shifting, it's just doing what an Eventide does. It's got this kind of modulation thing, they call it feedback, and it just it's kind of like a chorus in a way, and it thickens everything up and makes it swirlier just a little bit. So I'm going to hide that, but that's what we're playing through right here in aux 3. So let me start it. This is with the reverb and the Harmonizer on. All right, so let's listen to that again, but let me shut the Harmonizer off and see how different it sounds. You ready? Here we go. It's subtle, but it's there. All right, let's do it again. I can turn it up just a little more, but if you get too much in there, it starts to get obnoxious. Okay. Okay, so you hear kind of what the Harmonizer does. I can show you a quick pitch detune too, and you'll see that that's not what it is. So let me go up. Just a little pitch detune. Go back to the beginning of that. I don't hear that yet. That happens later, like in the 5150 times, and maybe a little bit on 1984 in a couple of select spots. You start to hear that actual pitch shift. But all right, so let me show you how to cheat your way around that with the built-in Tonex chorus, and it's not exact, but you can get there. So I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to set the pan control back to straight up again, because you can't pan while you're in the Tonex universe. Let's turn on the chorus, modulation, chorus, and I've kind of got it set to those controls, or set the way it kind of mimics that, and I do it pre. Let's try it pre and try it post. We'll do it each way. All right, so, and we can shut the actual Sunset Sound reverb off, and we can turn this reverb back on. Let me just make sure I got it set up right. Let me give it a little more there. Fair warning is kind of dark. We'll leave the color in the middle. All right, let's turn the reverb on. And I've got that set up as last. And the modulation is pre for right now. So let's see what that sounds like. All right, here we go. All right, well, it sounds pretty close. See, it's not bad at all. I could give it a little bit more reverb. Let's give it a little bit more reverb. See, it sounds different now because it's coming up the center instead of panned like on the record. So let's give it a lot more reverb so we hear more of that in the mix. All right, let's do that over here. Okay, so now let's try that modulation as post. Okay. So we got the chorus going post now. So anyway, that was just what I wanted to do, was just kind of show you what you could do with the onboard effects in Tonex without having to run it in a DAW, or not having to run expensive foot pedals or expensive like Eventide harmonizers and that sort of thing. So I hope that helps a lot. Just have fun with it.
Okay, so that's a wrap for this 8081 pre-release video. I just wanted to touch on a few things, let you know it's in the can, it's coming any day now. And we're going to cover 8284, and I wanted to split these up into 2 different videos, so consider this one part 1. 8284 has got a lot of moving parts, so I kind of wanted to cover that in a different thing, and I wanted to get some of the basic stuff out of the way here on the 8081 pre-release video. So stay tuned, check it out, check out 8081 when it releases, and 8284 is not far behind, and I will do part 2 coming up shortly.